The season may have ended on a sour note in the semis for Penn State, but all of the chips are being pushed to the center of the 2025 table in Happy Valley.
From LA to Piscataway, all Big Ten all year long. This is Big Ten 10.
Can you feel that? I think I can feel the excitement reverberating from central Pennsylvania all the way here in Minnesota. We're just a little bit removed from that heartbreaking semifinal loss to Notre Dame, and all of a sudden, the mood from Penn State and their fans has really flipped, and they're looking forward to an optimistic 2025 season. There is a lot of reasons to be optimistic. You know, I thought, and I said this before, I thought Penn State would be the team of 2024. It seemed like everything was kind of aligning. Abdul Carter, Drew Aller, those running backs, everybody was kind of coming in, and they'd be experienced, have some time under their belt for this season. But now a lot of those guys, well, they're coming back for 2025. And maybe, I'm not saying everything is a complete copy and paste, but there are some similarities to 2023 Michigan and 2024 Ohio State, right? Where Michigan, guys that could have went to the National Football League, they came back, right? They felt the pain of falling short in the postseason. They came back for one goal and one goal only to win a national championship. You have guys this year, I know they're one game away, but you have guys this year on this Ohio State team that came back. Guys that could have went to the NFL, guys came back for one reason and one reason only, to win a national championship after falling short the previous season. What do we have here for Penn State? Guys that have one more year of eligibility. They can run it back for one goal and one goal only to take it that step further past the semifinals into the national championship and to possibly bring a national championship back to State College, Pennsylvania. Man, it would be quite the storyline if this would be the third consecutive team from the Big Ten to be able to accomplish that goal. But we got a lot of time between now and then. We're going to be talking about these guys that are going to run it back. But first, we got to talk about a key departure. Penn State will undergo its third defensive coordinator search in the last 4 seasons. Now, when I initially heard that Tom Allen was going to leave Penn State to be the defensive coordinator at Clemson, the first thought that popped into my mind, I'm like, this is a lateral move at best. And I think I'm maybe being a little bit kind saying it's a lateral move. And I think the second thought that popped into my mind, this seems all about the dollar signs. We saw a dollar sign type of move when we saw Minnesota defensive coordinator Corey Heatherman go over to Miami. And now for Tom Allen to be able to go to the ACC, it seems like Dabo and all those folks down there in South Carolina were throwing a lot of money over at Tom. I mean, leaving, I know Clemson is a good school, but leaving a great situation defensively that you would have at Penn State and going down to Clemson, leaving for anything other than money just doesn't seem like it would be a very smart decision, certainly for Tom Allen over there. You know, you look at Allen and what he was able to do defensively with this group. They finished 7th in the country in yards allowed per game, 8th in the country in points allowed per game. So he was certainly continuing the tradition of defense at Penn State right now. And, you know, one thing that also kind of popped into my mind and why this was a little bit odd, so to speak, and why this certainly leaned towards the financial part of it is because look at the last 2 defensive coordinators at Penn State. You had Brent Pry, who left for a head coaching job at Virginia Tech. You had Manny Diaz, who left for a head coaching job over at Duke. Boy, what is it about Penn State defensive coordinators going to the ACC, man? So once again, it screams that Clemson threw out a boatload of money. Otherwise, why would you make that lateral move over to a place like Clemson? I don't think Penn State is going to have any problem attracting some of the top names right now in college football for this position. It's proven to be a spot where guys can come in, whether they were a head coach the previous year or whether they were another coordinator and they're going to a place like Penn State. Whatever the situation is, it's very clear that there is great personnel, and we'll talk about some of that personnel here in just a minute. And, it seems like whoever steps into this role can be at least a little bit successful. But there are going to be some top names, I think, mentioned for this defensive coordinator spot at Penn State. All right, let's move on to the guys that are going to be getting it done between the lines. And Penn State fans are hoping that this group that's running it back one more year can certainly get it done. If you're James Franklin, you have been hearing it from your fan base, and your fan base, of course, the big narrative and talking point, he can't get it done in the big game. If you thought, Mr. Franklin, if you thought that there was pressure to win big games before, 2025 will reach an all-new level because you've got all of these impact players, some that could have gone to the NFL, some that probably could have been drafted decently high in the NFL. They're coming back for one more run to get the job done. They're coming back to win some of these big football games to take it that step further, as I mentioned before. Let's chat about Drew Aller. All right, he's coming back next year in 2025. I think he's going to be one of the Big Ten's and college football's best quarterbacks. I think when you look at mock drafts for, say, the 2026 NFL draft in April, he's going to be mentioned in that first round conversation. I think he's got all the tools, and I've said this before. I think he's got all the tools, the arm strength, sometimes the accuracy, which also then steps over and overlaps into the consistency. We need to see him be more consistently accurate on a lot of these throws. Like, look at this last game against Notre Dame, right? That low throw near the goal line to Nick Singleton, overthrowing some deep balls down the field. Like, we've seen him be really good. You look at the Big Ten championship game against Oregon. Like, that dude was willing Penn State back into that football game, and he had them in a position to drive down the field and potentially tie that game against the Ducks in Indianapolis. We've seen him be really good. We've seen him be not so good. The key for Drew Aller in 2025, you got to play good in the big games. That's kind of where things have fallen a little bit short, really, other than the Big Ten championship for Drew Aller in State College. I would expect a good offensive line. You've got a chunk of players certainly returning that you can certainly rely on to give you time as well. The big question for Penn State, if they're going to take that next step, they need to be more explosive. They need to be more athletic on the perimeter. Is Kyron Hudson that answer? He's transferring in from USC. When I look at a guy like Kyron Hudson, I see a depth piece to strengthen their wide receiver room. I'm not sure if that's a guy that's going to all of a sudden add that explosiveness that you're looking for on the perimeter. Could he? Yeah, he could. But right now, that just doesn't seem to be the cause and effect that I look at. Devontae Ross was a guy. I remember watching him. He was at Troy this last year. He's transferring to Penn State. I watched him in that Troy, Iowa game earlier this season. He was explosive. Can he transfer that from the G5 level to the Power 2 level? He had over 1,000 yards and 11 touchdowns last season. He could be a candidate, right, to be that explosive option on the outside for Drew Aller next season. You've got Harrison Wallace returning. Amari Evans, we saw him kind of get over the top as well. How much can they develop at the wide receiver position? That's going to be a big key, I think, for Penn State. If they really want to get over the top and they want to make this 2025 season a lot like Michigan in 2023, a lot like Ohio State in 2024, I think a big key is going to be playmakers out on the perimeter. And then how do you replace Tyler Warren over there at tight end? They feel really good about Luke Reynolds at tight end. That was a freshman this past season. How much can he step up into that role as a sophomore next season? That is going to be a big question as well. But in football, you want to be solidified at quarterback. No team may be more solidified and confident in their quarterback than Penn State will be next season. Let's go to the backfield. Nicholas Singleton is coming back. Katron Allen is coming back. They combined for over 2,200 yards this past season. They both had 100-yard rushing season combined for 20 touchdowns. Now, you might think, well, both of these guys had 1,000 yards and both had really good seasons. I think both of them had their best seasons as a Penn State Nittany Lion. You might think that's enough for them to go into the NFL draft, but considering what we have from the NFL and how the NFL views the value of running backs, I think you're going to see a lot more from this at the running back position, where you're going to see guys that have really good junior seasons, that have 1 year of eligibility left, that stay for that eligibility because, running back is maybe not as valued of a position at the NFL level as it had been before, and Penn State fans are certainly thankful of that Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen are coming back for one more season. They have the potential to have an all-time backfield campaign. I mentioned 2,200 yards, 20 touchdowns. I mean, you might be looking at a combined 2,500 yards and 25 to maybe even close to 30 touchdowns next season. I think that's going to be the bread and butter of Andy Kotelnicki's system next year. You saw it towards the end of last season. This run game really started to get good. This run game really started to hit their peak. And when that run game was working, that's when Penn State was really working. I think that's what's going to make them so dangerous next season. Maybe this Penn State team, I kind of talked about these last two, Michigan 2 years ago and Ohio State this season. Maybe it'll be look a little bit more like Michigan. Maybe Drew Aller will look a little bit more like J.J. McCarthy, right, where they had that great offensive line, they had that great run game, and J.J. was asked to make plays just when he was needed to ask to make plays. Remember, of course, Penn State fans know how Michigan was just able to run the football and did not throw the football in that game a couple of years back, certainly. So I think that's maybe the mold that this Penn State team is going to be in. Very physical at the point of attack. And Drew just, make plays down the field when we ask you to and when we really need to be able to make plays down the field. I can certainly see that comp certainly fitting in as well. And, you can also lean on a really good defense. And Penn State is going to be able to lean, I think, on a really good defense. Dennis Sutton is running it back on the defensive side of the football. And, he's just another first-round defensive end edge type of player that's sitting there in the line of them that we've had here at Penn State as of late. Of course, Chop Robinson was a first-round NFL draft pick. Abdul Carter will be a first-round NFL draft pick as well, and I think Dennis Sutton certainly fits into that as well. This past year, 8.5 sacks. That was 6th in the Big Ten. He had 13 tackles for loss. That was 5th in the Big Ten. Those are really good numbers. Really good numbers. Dennis Sutton will be one of the top edge rushers, guys that create the most havoc. I think him and Mateo Uiagalelei over at Oregon are probably going to be some of the top two next season. So having him back as that typical Penn State guy that's going to get after it, I think he's going to be one of the best defensive players in the Big Ten, if not all of college football next season. But I think another big reason he could have success is because maybe not all of the attention is going to be on him. They've got Zane Durant coming back on this defensive line as well. He's been a little bit of an unsung hero of these past couple of years. Remember, a couple of years ago, you had Chop Robinson and Adisa Isaac. This past year, of course, you had the aforementioned Dennis Sutton and Abdul Carter. And you got Zane Durant right in the middle there. And he's been very good. This past year, 3 sacks and 11 tackles for loss. Now, they got to find a way to – you're not going to replace Abdul Carter, but you got to find a way to kind of fill up his production. Certainly, somehow, that is going to be a big question as well. When you look at the rest of this defense, Tony Rojas, Dom DeLuca at linebacker, that maybe Kobe King, we'll see on him. Zakee Wheatley coming back in the secondary, A.J. Harris. King Mack transfers back, right? He was at Penn State, transferred to Bama. Now he's back at Penn State. He was a 4-star prospect from a couple of years ago, certainly. There are certainly holes to fill throughout this team. I certainly think on defense, but this defense, I think, is slated to be another really, really, really good unit. And whoever takes over as the defensive coordinator is going to be sitting pretty with what is happening on campus over there at Penn State. James Franklin, the pressure is on in 2025 over there at Penn State. Maybe like it's never been on these Nittany Lions. Those are my thoughts on everybody running it back for 2025 for the blue and white. I want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think that this team can be a national championship contender in 2025, or maybe will we see more of the same from the Nittany Lions? Leave all of those thoughts in the comments below. I'm Big Ten Ted. We'll see you in the next one.
Thanks for watching Big Ten Ted, where it's all Big Ten all year long. Make sure to like the video to spread the word of Big Ten Ted to the masses, and subscribe to the channel for updates on Big Ten content that drops every day.